Before I go on with more videos about the Dirtywave M8 instrument effects commands, I want to talk in more general terms about the relationship between the parameters on the instrument page, the modulators on the mods page, and of course any effects commands that we can put in here on the phrase page. I've created a new song here, very basic. What I've done is, this instrument is a WAV synth. I've just got this very basic pulse sound, pretty nasty at the moment. I'll do something about that in a moment. All these parameters on the instrument page are there to shape the sound, and with this WAV synth we've got the shape, we've got the size, we've got this mult, warp, mirror, and then the more standard things like filter, cutoff, resonance, and over here we've got amp, limiter, pan, dry, chorus, delay, reverb. At the moment the filter is off. Let's change it to a low pass and bring it down a bit. And I've put a C4 on step 0 here, so we've run this. Bring it up a bit, bring the resonance up a bit. And that's an acceptable sound to start with. So these are the instrument parameters. And these ones, shape, size, mult, warp and mirror, are specific to the WAV synth. When I deal with the instrument commands for those in another video, I'll deal with those parameters specifically. But I've already dealt with filter and cutoff and resonance and amp, limiter, pan, dry, chorus, delay and reverb in a previous video. So that is one way in which we can shape the sound, and we can tweak the instrument sound globally with these parameters. That's great, but it's only the start of the fun, because if I press shift and up, and it takes me to the instrument mods page, and here we have 4 modulators which can further shape the sound and actually work in tandem with those parameters down on the instrument page. We've got modulator 1, modulator 2, modulator 3 and modulator 4. Now the default is always modulator 1 is set to AHD envelope, modulator 2 the same, and 3 is an LFO and 4 is an LFO, and they're all turned off. So basically from default none of these modulators are doing anything to the sound. There are 6 different types of modulators. So if you look at modulator 1, and I just scroll through them by holding edit and right. So 00 is the AHD envelope, 01 is an ADSR envelope, 02 is a drum envelope, 03 is LFO, 4 is trig envelope, and 5 is tracking. Those are the 6 available modulators, things that change the sound. The destinations of the modulator are as follows. We've got off, obviously, we've got volume, we've got pitch. Now size, mult, warp, mirror, those are specific to the WAV synth. You won't see those on other synthesizers when you've got those set as instruments. We've also got cutoff, resonance, amp, pan, so I'm sure you noticed that several of the parameters from the main instrument page appeared in that last list. Now volume and pitch, those can be set obviously here on the phrase page. There's the pitch, there's the volume. On the mods page, if you alter the volume or the pitch, you'll be altering those settings that you've got on the phrase page. Size, mult, warp and mirror are specific to this instrument. If you look down, you'll see them, and then you can alter the cutoff and the resonance and the amp and the pan, and like I say, these mod amount, mod rate and mod both are for modulating next door neighbours. Lots of these parameters that you find on the instrument page can also be altered by the modulators in different ways, so it starts to get more and more complex, more and more involved. Let's try and understand what each of the modulators actually does to the sound, and don't forget there can be 4 of these set to each instrument. So the AHD envelope is linked to the tempo of the song. This simple envelope changes the sound over time. The ADSR envelope is the more traditional style with a sustain and release portion, and again this alters the sound over time but it's not tied to the tempo of the song. And for the release, the R in the ADSR to work, you've got to have an off message, a note off message. So over on here, if I press edit and option twice, you'd need that off there for the release portion to kick in. Won't get into that here. The drum envelope, as the name would imply, is great for percussive sounds, and it's got an envelope peak and body setting down here. You can see that, specific to it. The LFO is a low frequency oscillator and operates over time. LFOs are great for pulsing rhythmical effects. With these envelopes, AHD and ADSR, you can change the shape of the envelope, but with the LFO you can't. This can be set up to endlessly repeat, or it can happen just once. There are all kinds of shapes that can be chosen for the oscillator. Look down here, you've got triangle, sine, ramp down, ramp up, and all these other ones, lows and lows and lows. This trig function determines how the LFO triggers when the chosen shape comes to the end of its cycle. You need to experiment with this. The frequency sets the rate of the cycle. Lower numbers yield faster rates measured in phrases, steps and ticks, and this frequency is linked to the tempo of the song. Let's come up to our next modulator, which is trig envelope. This is similar to the AHD but can have positive and negative amounts, so it's called bipolar, and is affected by the source, which can be an instrument or one of the 8 tracks. Like I say, I'm not going to go into massive details here because I'm still essentially dealing with the instrument effects commands, don't forget. And the final modulator, tracking. This changes the sound by looking at the note or the velocity of the note in the phrase. And if you choose velocity takeover in the source, the velocities in the phrase will be disabled, and limits can be set with low value and high value. So that's a very, very brief trip through the modulators, but it gives us a bit of background, I think. So having got to grips with what the modulators do, then we can turn our attention to the instrument effects commands. As I said before, these depend on which instrument type we have chosen and which modulators we have selected on the mods page. There are several ways you can shape your sound, both on the instrument page down here with the modulators up here, and of course on the phrase page with the effects commands. I haven't even started looking at effects commands with the tables. Here's a table for this synth, and you can see it's got 3 effects slots for each step. Maybe we'll do that at the end of this video. You can obviously add effects commands to tables for even more complex sounds and sequences. If you're not sure what tables are, they're kind of sub-sequences to the main sequence. Right, so I'm going to load in something I did yesterday, which is going to help us demonstrate all this stuff. You can see this is a wash with effects commands. I've got 5 C5 notes here. This is a WAV synth again, and I've tweaked the filter on this one and the resonance. So yeah, it's pretty crazy, isn't it? Let's run it and hear what we got. There's a lot going on there. Let's look at the mods page. First of all, to do that we need to come over to the instrument page by holding shift and right, and then up to the mods page by holding shift and up. So on the mods page I'm using an AHD envelope on mod 1, an LFO on mod 2, and I'm using an ADSR envelope on mod 3. The mod 1 AHD envelope is modulating or changing the pitch. The LFO in mod 2 is changing the volume, and over on mod 3 the ADSR envelope is changing the cutoff. So 3 things going on there that are changing those elements of pitch, volume and cutoff. Okay, down on the actual instrument page you've got these parameters that could be changed. I think I've only changed, I did change the warp, I put it on 30. If you press option and edit together on a parameter, you can see what the default is, and these are all default apart from warp, which I say I've changed to 30, and obviously I've changed the filter to low pass and put the cutoff and resonance to these values. Other than that, there's no changes. Okay, and over on the phrase page I've entered in all these effects commands. So back on the modulators page on this AHD, the amount of this envelope is set by default at FF, but we're going to bring it down to 20. Okay, so that's a change from the default of FF. The decay is normally set at 80, we're setting it at 40. Over on the phrase page, we've got this EA17F command on step 0. So what this does, it boosts the envelope amount on the AHD in mod slot 1 to maximum just for that note. And if we just run this, look at the green dot on the amount on the mods page. So I'm just going to go over to that. So I'm going to highlight amount, look for the green dot. So top left, every time that first note in the phrase sounds, see that green dot zoom over to the right as it boosts that amount. Now don't forget, this is changing the pitch, not the volume. This is set to changing the actual pitch of the note. And obviously that's relative to the pitch that's set over here on the phrase page. Mod 2 is set to an LFO, and this LFO's destination is volume. So this low frequency oscillator is changing the volume. The frequency is set to 4. Now I've come back to the phrase page. On step 8, this C5 has got an LF201 command. So LF2 means the LFO frequency on modulator number 2 is set to 01, which is going to be a very fast modulation. So when you hear this note kick in, you'll hear the modulation change. You'll hear it pulse quickly. You hear that whoop 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 on step 8. The frequency is set at 04, which is 4 steps and 0 ticks. This effects command here is changing it to, as you can see, 1 step and 0 ticks. So the effects command is altering the setting on the mods 2 frequency. You see how they work with each other, and you'll see that little green dot pop up on the frequency when it gets to that effects command. So watch it, it's 1, 2, there, there. And also notice how the white dot moves quickly. So this is how we set a modulator on the mods page and then alter it with an effects command. Pretty cool, isn't it? Now down on step C, we've got the C5. They're all C5s, of course, and I've put in a cutoff effects command and a resonance effects command. And if I run this, listen out for this note, watch out for the green dots on the instrument page. So let's go to the instrument page. So you're looking at the cutoff and the resonance. Watch for the green dots when we get to that note. On beat 4. So watch out for the dots on cutoff and resonance. Because I've changed them with the effects command. So do you remember I said earlier that I'd set the cutoff and resonance different to normal, different to the default, but they're being further changed by these 2 effects commands. And you'll notice when I run this, other dots appearing as other parameters are being altered. You see? It's pretty cool. I love this. It's brilliant, isn't it? Now, on the note which is on step 4, let's come up to that. This one here, I've put 2 effects commands, SRV97 and SCHD7, and that SRV is a reverb send and SCH is a chorus send. So again, we'll run it, and the note that's on this step 4 will be having reverb placed on it and chorus placed on it. Look at the instrument page, both of those, chorus and reverb, are turned down, but watch what happens when we get to that note. There, see the 2 dots appear? 1, 2. So it's on beat 2 that you see the chorus and the reverb being temporarily, if you like, switched on and boosted. So So in here I've just got one note in this phrase, but it's already very interesting because of all these amazing effects commands that are coming in and altering the sound. Over here, and there are 3 slots of course for each note. Step E, right, what's on step E? We've got a change of volume, E0, and I've got a filter 0, 2. So on this effects command, if I hold edit, I've set the filter type to high pass. There it is. So at that point on step E, you'll hear the note go very toppy. Just on that very last note. That bzz, right at the end there, because it's that filter type kicking in. Now on the instrument page the filter type is low pass, but that effects command there is changing it momentarily to high pass, and the volume is changing. It's set at 74 here, but this E0 is bringing it down by 32, so we could bring it down even more, I suppose. You can hear the change in volume as I change the effects command. Let's change it even lower. Let's just run this. We can hardly hear it now, can we? Even though it's set at 74 here, this volume effects command of C0, which is minus 64, is bringing the volume down temporarily there. So lots of things we can do to alter the sound. So on the mods page, just to remind you, we had an AHD envelope altering the pitch. We've got an LFO altering the volume, we've seen that already. And over here on mod 3, we've got an ADSR envelope altering the cutoff. Now back on the phrase page, if we look on effects slot 3, I've dedicated this to this DE3, which if I go to the value and hold edit, this is the decay setting of the envelope. Let's go back to the modulator page. So it's the cutoff. So it's an ADSR, it's an envelope, but it's affecting not the volume or the pitch, it's affecting the cutoff frequency. Here at step 0 it's 0.017 of a second. Here it's 0.035 of a second. Here it's 0.054 of a second. Getting longer, 0.084 and 1.140 seconds. So this modulator is changing the cutoff, but what's actually being altered is the decay, because on the effects command here it's the decay that's being changed. So if we come over to the instrument page and up to the mods page and run it, watch the decay green dot. It gets progressively further to the right as the decay time changes. So it ignores that 80 settings there. 80 is the default setting, and so the green dot is reflecting what's happening as a result of what I've done with those effects commands. Okay, pretty good. So my point is that an instrument note can be globally changed on the instrument page with these parameters. It can be changed on the mods page, and it can be further changed by these effects commands. So it's a very powerful system, isn't it? And obviously these effects commands, there are 3 of them per note, per step, you see. So I mean, it's power beyond belief, isn't it, really? And when you do your sequences, rather than just putting notes in and leaving it at that, if you use these effects commands, don't forget I'm using exclusively the instrument effects commands, but of course there are these others, the mixer effects commands and the sequencer effects commands. So there's a lot there that you can use, and I've been through all those already. Earlier on I said I hadn't tried using the effects commands on a table, so let's do that, shall we? So on this song I've just got a simple phrase, C5, F5, G5, C6, and I'm using this table 10, that goes with instrument 10. You'll notice on step 0 of this table I've got a setting of 0 and then a setting of 4 and a setting of 7, so the note is going to change by nothing and by 4 and by 7. And on these 3 steps I put different filter type settings. So 0-1 is low pass, 0-2 is high pass, 0-3 is band pass. So what's going to happen here, very quickly we're going to change filter type as this table runs. Now I've set the table tick speed to 0.6, which is the same speed as the actual phrase. So if I run this, let's look at the table. So it's going normal note, 4 steps up, 7 steps up, normal note. And notice the first 3 steps in this table have got 3 different filter settings, but step 3 here has got nothing, so that'll be the default setting over here, which is a filter setting of off. So that's a very simple example of how we can use the effects commands on a table. And obviously 0470 is first, third, fifth and first again, so it's like a major arpeggio, isn't it? So we have a major arpeggio, C major, F major, G major and C major again. So it's chords broken up into their component parts. And perhaps as I go through this more, I may do more and more work with tables and the effects commands, but at the moment I'm just concerned with going through the actual effects commands, and at the moment, as you know, it's the instrument effects commands. I wanted to do this video because I felt like lots of these things needed explaining properly before we moved on. So if you found this video useful, please give it a like and consider subscribing to my channel. Thank you very much for watching, and you'll see me in my next video.